Margaret is what I consider the steel magnolia. She is all Southern belle and charm, and blonde hair and blue eyes, and she can charm anyone at any time. But there's a steel underneath, and a focus, and a direction, and a very brilliant businesswoman.
Margaret Wise was born in the small southern town of Prentiss, Mississippi, just outside Jackson, Mississippi. It was a town filled with the quaint charm and family values of a picturesque southern small town. She was the older daughter of 3 children, a sister, Mary Louise, a few years younger, and a younger brother, Tony, several years her junior, born when she was a senior in high school.
It was a very Tennessee Williams town. My father had 10 brothers and sisters, and we all lived very close. And the town had about 2,000 people in it, and most of us were all related. And all my uncles and aunts had big old homes with big old halls down the middle and rooms on either side and big porches. And the houses all need painting, and the roofs all needed a new roof. And everybody had at least one good piece of silver that survived the Civil War, and a big story to go along with it.
Margaret learned early the importance of working and doing her share of the work.
My father had a small grocery store. Actually, it was a general mercantile. He had a meat market in the back and a service station on the side, and we sold seed, fertilize, and blue jeans on one side. So it was really just a general store, and we all worked at it. My sister and I, and my mother. My mother tried to run the store in a mannerly fashion. She was a bookkeeper, and my father tried to give away the store.
Her father also instilled in Margaret the importance of helping others, not by his words, but by his deeds.
We had a ranch outside, about 5 miles outside of town, and well, we call it in the South, we call it a cattle farm. They do not call it, in Texas they like ranches, but in the South they call them cattle farms. And Mother tried to keep him out there as much as possible because he really gave everybody in town credit because he knew everybody and he loved everybody. And so she tried to keep him out as much as possible because we had rooms of IOUs and people that she knew were never going to pay us. And once a year she would go in and burn everything, burn all the IOUs. He loved everybody, and he couldn't stand to think that anybody might go hungry.
While there was time for fun and some rodeos, Margaret worked most of the time.
The only time we got off was to go to school and go to church. But we loved him, and he instilled a terrific work ethic in my sister and my brother and I. And it was a great life.
Even as a young girl, Margaret appreciated the blessings she had growing up in a small town.
I knew everybody in that little town, and I knew I contributed, and I was part of it. I loved it. They loved me. I knew they were. I could go to anybody for help, and I feel very honored. I'm very, very privileged that I grew up in a small town. It gave me a lot of values that have helped me all through my life.
Southern values governed her father's rules when it came to his daughter's dating.
My father didn't let any of his children date, any of his girls date until they were 18. Well, my sister did what she was supposed to do. Of course, I didn't. I was pretty headstrong. And there was one boy that my father just would not let me date. He was an Air Force pilot. He was older, and my father didn't think he was a man of very good moral character, and he was too fast and all this kind of stuff. But all I saw was he had beautiful brown eyes, and he kissed good. So anyway, my daddy wouldn't let me date him, so I showed him. I ran off and got married.
Margaret had just started college when she married her pilot. Her father wasn't pleased, but he loved her and gave her some advice.
He said, okay, you've got married now. You better get a trade. And so I decided my aunt had a beauty school. So I went to beauty school and Buckley's Beauty College.
Married with responsibilities, Margaret realized she needed to make an income. Young and brash, she determined owning her own business was the best way to success.
I talked these girls and a couple of guys into going in with me and going to work for me, and I had $300 in the bank. And if I hadn't made the payroll the first week, I would have closed, which looking back on it was pretty stupid. If I had been 19, I wouldn't have done that.
She made the payroll, which was the beginning of a very successful business career in Jackson, Mississippi.
Started off with 5 employees, and then I wound up with about 50. And I got into real estate. I decided that that was where the real money was, so I took my cash out of the beauty shop and started a real estate business. And I bought small apartments and redid them and refurbished them and got in the real estate business. I was in a shopping center, a type of New Orleans type shopping center with a courtyard in the middle and shops around the side. And over the years, when my neighbors would leave, I would just knock a hole in the wall and go over. So I had a dress shop, and I had a fur shop, I had an antique shop, and I had doors, and they're all connected.
Margaret would need the success. Her father was right, and her marriage did not last long.
But out of that marriage, I had a wonderful, wonderful daughter, and that was the highlight of my life. And she was just the most precious thing in the world, and I was never sorry about the marriage because of her.
In a few years, the responsibility of her family would soon grow.
My father had died when my brother was 14. My mother had a stroke 5 days later, and she was in bed for a year. So I brought my brother and my mother to live with me.
Her brother, Tony, lived with her until he graduated from college. Her mother remains with her to this day. Margaret focused on working hard and developing her business interests. She became well known in the makeup industry, working for Clairol, worked as a model, and was a clothing designer. Here we see her in Paris, where she won a prestigious award for her unique clothing design.
I won the state for costume design. Then I went on to Palm Beach and won the costume design that year. And then I went on to Paris and won the Rose de Jour costume design in Paris with a butterfly. I did a butterfly and I made the wings out of fishing poles. I did 2 long fishing poles, and so we drug these fishing poles all over the world, and all these contests. That was quite a feat, trying to get people and getting on planes and getting cabs to take you with fishing poles hanging out of your window. But that was the butterfly wing.
However, living in the deep South in the 1960s had its challenges. Margaret met with resistance from the community when she put a black hairdresser to work in the front of her salon.
I had crosses burned on my front yard because I hired blacks in the front. It was an intense time. You understand, I was also head of a women's movement there. So I wasn't very popular with some people, that's to say the least. And then hiring black people in the front to work in the front was not done at that time. I didn't do it because of to make a statement or anything. At that time, they were just good people. They were doing a good job, and I thought they should be doing hair out front. They shouldn't have to work in the back because they were making money for me. We lost some business over it, and but at that time I was so stubborn, and some of the other people that were working there didn't think that was a very good idea, and so I lost a couple of employees. But at that point, then it got to a point where I saw that I was going to dig my heels in. It was the right thing to do, and I was not going to go back on it. They burned the cross on my yard, and my father was more upset than anybody else because he was scared. My mother and father were scared of my safety. But it worked out fine. People have a way of forgetting things, and besides that, I had the best beauty shop in town. They couldn't go anywhere else and get their hair done, so they may quit for a little while. They all came back. It worked out fine.
Raising her daughter, Kathy, was her greatest joy, but it was not without challenges. Kathy was born with a heart condition. However, the doctors believed she would outgrow it. Margaret was intent on helping her enjoy all of life. Kathy was an outdoor girl who loved skiing and horseback riding. Margaret, Kathy, and Tony became involved in showing Appaloosa horses on the weekends, and Kathy won several titles, much to Margaret's pleasure. By the time Kathy was of college age, she had found a heart for God and devoted a great deal of time to the Campus for Christ organization. Margaret would soon find that she herself would have to cling to her own faith. One morning, she received a phone call from Lewis Wise, the president of Mississippi State University, where Kathy was attending.
He called and told me to sit down, and did I have somebody around, and her roommate had found her dead that morning. And I had talked to her at 11:30 that night because we were planning a big party. She was engaged, and we were planning a big football type of party at my home. And I had talked to her at 11:30, and she had told me she was very, very tired. And she had been to the doctor about a week before because she kept saying, "I'm really tired." And the doctor said, "Oh, you're trying to do too much, you know." And she was writing a speech. She was making a speech the next day. And I think it's the only thing that kept my sanity, because it was a beautiful, beautiful speech. And I still can't talk about it because I break up. But it was like a message to me. It was her speech that she was giving on campus the next day for Campus Crusade for Christ. And it was a beautiful piece. And so I have it framed and I put it by my bed. And it was her message to me. I took it as her message to me that she wanted me to live. And I did not want to after that. It was hard for me to go on because I kept thinking, well, why not me, you know? Why her? She had her whole life ahead of her, and she had so much promise. So, but I did. You keep going. You don't have any choice. Well, you do have a choice. But the choice is that you live, and you make the best out of your life.
After her daughter's death, Margaret focused on her business and service to the community. She was a staunch Democrat at the time and worked for the rights of businesswomen and the small business person. She had become good friends with Lewis Wise, working on several political projects together. One day, he suggested she meet his brother Bill, whose wife had recently died.
When Bill's brother told me that he wanted me to meet his brother, who had just lost his wife, I thought, no way. He's in big business. He's a Republican. There is nothing in the world, this man, and he's an intellectual. He's very intellectual. And he's very much into books, and he likes Samuel Johnson and Boswell, and at that time, I'd never read Samuel Johnson and Boswell. And I thought, this guy and I would have nothing in common. I don't want to meet him. So I fought that for about 2 years.
They tried to get us together on a number of occasions. It just didn't happen. And over and over, something would occur and we wouldn't meet. But finally, my brother called me in Houston and said Margaret was going to be there, and asked me to take her out to dinner. She had come to Houston to see an allergist. So I said I would, and I called her up and went by her hotel to pick her up, and that was it. I mean, I was smitten hard, and after the first few minutes, I was done for. I was impressed when I saw her. I recognized she was pretty, I thought, but more than that, she was so cheerful and gay and outgoing and friendly. She was as friendly as a pup. And to someone as naturally reserved as I am, that was very attractive. Anyway, we went out that night and the next day, and I saw her the next day, and then went to Jackson to see her again.
And 6 weeks later, we were married. So, and we haven't stopped talking yet. It's the best thing ever happened to me.
Bill was a vice president and general legal counsel for Shell Oil. He was planning to retire, and the couple were to settle down in Jackson, Mississippi. But Shell was undergoing a major merger, and the executives convinced him and Margaret to stay with them. Within a year, she had sold all of her properties in Jackson and moved to Houston, Texas. From here, she and Bill traveled the world, meeting with heads of state, even dining at the White House with the Reagans.
They were so friendly and so nice. They always made me feel very, very comfortable. And I noticed the smarter the person was, and the more famous they were, or maybe the bigger their position, the more at ease they made everyone feel. And I thought that's probably part of their greatness.
In 1987, Bill found his hard work to be taking a toll on his health. After suffering a heart attack, his doctor told him he would need to get away from the stress of business if he wanted to live. They visited some friends on Siesta Key.
We came down here to visit some people in Florida, and he just fell in love with it. I wasn't that sold on it, but he was crazy about it, and he found this place on Siesta Key. It was a big piece of property, and he just, on the water, and he just loved it. And I thought, okay, if he wants it, go ahead. I'll go ahead with it. So he did it, and I thought, okay, I'll come down here, and all my life I wanted to play golf and play tennis and do a little painting, because and do a little writing and do all the things that I never had time to do. And so that was our plan, and he was going to do the same. We were really just going to do the things that we wanted to do and really just enjoy life.
That leisure life did not last long, as she soon met one of her neighbors, an energetic woman named Dean Allen.
She came over with a pie to welcome me to the neighborhood, and she found out we had a mutual friend, and that I had done some fundraising for the Houston Opera. So, well, that started that, and so she decided that I should do a lot of, should help just a little bit with the opera. So then I did that, and I did this, then I met somebody from the symphony, and I've always loved people, and I thought, well, it'd be a nice way to meet a few people, and I could use it'll be a nice way to get involved in a small way. I was just going to work, just in a small way.
Margaret was the highlight of my 14 years as executive director. She came in as president, and we had had some excellent men presidents, but Margaret put the Opera Association into the mainstream, letting the rest of the city know what was happening at the opera. Margaret not only has that wonderful feminine touch, she also has a Midas touch, and it was really a delight to work with this very precious person.
From that point, she became the desired chairwoman for nonprofit organizations and fundraisers. She became involved with the Florida West Coast Symphony, Girls Incorporated, New Colleges Action Auction, the Women's Resource Center, the Heart Association, the Cancer Society, the Blood Bank, the Wine Fest, Spanish Point, the Oslo, as well as a host of other organizations, all vying for the wit and charm and expertise of Margaret Wise.
Margaret is a wonderful person. She is somebody you can count upon. She is active on a continual basis. She supports just about everything, and she's a worker, and she has the ability to bring people together to support her and whatever nonprofit she's working on at the time. And I think she's one of a kind.
She's a whirlwind. You have to really run fast to keep up with her. She creates a tremendous amount of energy. People want to help her. People want to create a lot of fun around her. She doesn't leave any opportunity unturned. She's just a terrific person to work with, and I always know that any event I work with her is going to be terrifically successful.
It doesn't matter what needs to be done. The terrible things like lifting heavy things to set up an event, the behind the scenes, the getting all the funds together for the event, the hard things. It's very hard to ask people for money, And she does, because she believes in what she's asking for. And she gets results because people can see and feel that she's sincere.
She's got enough energy to fuel a rocket ship. She loves people. She's not afraid of anything. She'll take on anything. And she's one of nature's volunteers, really. She'll commit to anything that's a good cause or that a friend asks her to do. From taking on some major project that involve a year's work to going down and licking stamps and dressing envelopes for somebody else's project, or just being there and spending time with a friend that wants to visit or talk or whatever. Each one of her days, to me as an observer, each one of her days would make an ordinary person's week, would make my week.
Margaret became Margaret, I think, following the death of her daughter. It crystallized Margaret's passion to do good, her absolute commitment to God and to religion, to other people. Margaret looks around her and looks for what is right. Margaret can and has raised millions of dollars for this community. Awareness, friends. Margaret can do anything she sets her mind to.
I would like people to know that she is what you see. I mean, she truly is as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside.
Why Margaret Wise does it all is quite simple.
There's a need there. And how can you see a need and not do it? And I feel like that it's my duty as a citizen and as a person in this community that if someone asks me to do something, I try to do it. That there's a need there, and if somebody asks me, I try to do it. I try to do something. I want to contribute, and I want to be part of where I live, and that's the little town. That's the little town in me, that I want to be part of it. I want to feel like I can contribute to something. I want to get in the middle of things. I want to participate. I've never been much of a spectator.
Margaret Wise is a woman who has worked hard, made a success of her own businesses, and given of her energy and money to help Sarasota charities. But whatever you do, don't call her a socialite.
I don't think of myself as a socialite because I think of a socialite as someone who goes to parties for the party's sake and just flipping from one party to the other with, just out of care in the world. And that's lovely if you can do that. But when I go to a party, I see all the hard work gone there. I see all the hard work in the planning. I see all the hard work in these events in getting the money. You not only got to plan, come up with a plan, then you got to come up and try to get the money. Then you got to come up with a committee. Then you got to come up with, how is this going to work? How is this going to work? How is this? What is your purpose? Are you trying to get awareness? Are you trying to make money? Usually you're trying to do both. And there's a lot of pressure on you. So when I see a party, I see all the hard work. I see all the planning that went into the invitation. I see all the planning that went into the decorations. I see all the planning that went into all the work that's there. So I see someone who probably just put their dress on in the coat closet in the back, and probably did their hair as they were running out, and somebody who hadn't slept for about 5 nights before because they were trying to get everything perfect for that night. And I don't see that as a socialite. I've always worked too hard to just be wrote off as a socialite.
We ask Margaret her advice to those who follow.
First, know yourself, and then contribute. Make a contribution. Get involved. Make a contribution if it's time. You got time, that's fine. If it's money, that's fine. If you got both, that's fine. But be a part of what's going on around you. Contribute.